2 months ago, I was interviewing this economics professor who's spent 30 years studying financial collapses around the world, and he told me something that completely shifted my understanding of what actually happens when economies break down. He said, "You want to know what people really fight over during collapse? It's not gold or guns or gasoline, it's soap, it's batteries. It's the cheap stuff sitting in your bathroom cabinet that suddenly becomes more valuable than your car." That conversation launched me into the deepest research dive I've ever done. I spent weeks analyzing economic collapse data from Argentina, Venezuela, Greece, and even historical examples like Weimar Germany. I talked to people who lived through real economic meltdowns, studied what disappeared from stores first, and documented what items caused actual physical altercations between desperate people. What I discovered will blow your mind. There are 8 incredibly cheap household items that become so valuable during economic collapse that people literally fight over them in stores. We're talking about products that cost less than a candy bar but turn into currency worth more than paper money when everything falls apart. Item number 5 on this list caused riots in Venezuela when it disappeared from stores, and most Americans have containers of it just sitting in their kitchen cabinet. And item 8? During the Greek financial crisis, people were trading entire paychecks for packages of this stuff because it solved problems that money couldn't fix. Item 1. Disposable lighters. Let's start with something that perfectly illustrates how value completely transforms during economic collapse. Disposable lighters, those plastic Bic lighters you can buy for 50 cents at any gas station, become worth their weight in precious metals when normal supply chains break down. Here's what most people don't understand about economic collapse. It's not just that things get expensive. Certain items completely disappear because manufacturers can't afford to make them, and distributors can't afford to ship them. I was reading firsthand accounts from Venezuela's economic collapse, and you know what people were saying caused the most fights in stores? Disposable lighters. When electricity becomes unreliable and gas supplies get cut off, everyone suddenly needs fire for cooking, heating, and basic survival. But here's where it gets really interesting. Lighters are small, lightweight, universally understood, and immediately useful. They become currency because everyone knows their value and everyone needs what they provide. During Argentina's 2001 economic collapse, people were trading lighters for food, medicine, and essential services. A single working lighter could buy a day's worth of groceries because fire became more valuable than money. The smart money is buying lighters in bulk right now while they're still ridiculously cheap. A case of 50 Bic lighters costs maybe $20, but during economic collapse, each one could be worth $50 or more in purchasing power. Item 2. Batteries. Here's something that illustrates perfectly how modern convenience items become survival necessities during economic breakdown. Batteries turn into currency when electrical grids become unreliable. During economic collapse, power outages become frequent and unpredictable. Everything people need for basic functioning runs on batteries. Flashlights, radios, medical devices, communication equipment, even some water purification systems. I was studying the Greek financial crisis, and battery shortages became so severe that people were removing them from store displays and remote controls. Families would ration battery usage like they were managing precious resources. But here's what makes batteries especially valuable during economic collapse. They come in standard sizes that everyone recognizes: AA, AAA, C, D, 9 volt. These universal standards mean batteries become like standardized currency. During Venezuela's hyperinflation, my contacts there told me that batteries became more stable stores of value than actual money. While currency was losing value daily, batteries maintained consistent purchasing power because everyone needed them, but supply was limited. A warehouse pack of mixed batteries costs maybe $40 today, but during economic collapse, those same batteries could be worth hundreds in purchasing power. Item 3. Toilet paper. This might sound almost comical until you understand what happened during even minor supply chain disruptions. Remember the toilet paper fights during the early pandemic? That was just a preview of what happens during real economic breakdown. Toilet paper represents something much deeper than hygiene. It represents basic human dignity and normalcy. When people can't maintain basic cleanliness, everything else becomes secondary to restoring that sense of human decency. But here's what makes toilet paper especially problematic during economic collapse. It's bulky, expensive to ship, requires significant manufacturing infrastructure, and has low profit margins. When economies break down, these low-margin necessities disappear first. I was reading accounts from Argentina's collapse, and toilet paper became so valuable that people were keeping it in safes, like cash. Families would ration squares per day because getting more wasn't guaranteed. During Venezuela's crisis, toilet paper disappeared from stores for months at a time. When it occasionally appeared, people would literally fight over packages because everyone needed it, but availability was completely unpredictable. But toilet paper has dozens of uses beyond the obvious: fire starting, wound dressing, general cleaning, food wrapping. During crisis situations when medical supplies aren't available, toilet paper becomes a multi-purpose survival tool. Item 4. Soap and hygiene products. Let's talk about something that becomes incredibly valuable for both practical and psychological reasons during economic breakdown. Basic hygiene products transform from convenience items into luxury goods that people fight over. During economic collapse, hygiene isn't just about comfort, it becomes about health, social acceptance, and basic human dignity. When you can't maintain cleanliness, everything else becomes harder. During the Soviet Union's collapse, hygiene products became black market currency. A bar of soap could buy food, a bottle of shampoo was worth a week's wages, and toothpaste became so valuable that people would trade family heirlooms for it. But here's where hygiene products become especially problematic during an economic crisis. They require complex manufacturing processes, global supply chains for ingredients, and significant packaging infrastructure. When economies collapse, these sophisticated production systems break down quickly. I was talking to someone who lived through Venezuela's hyperinflation, and you know what they told me? Watching people fight over soap in stores was more heartbreaking than watching them fight over food, because it represented the complete breakdown of human dignity. The barter value is incredible, because hygiene products solve immediate personal problems. When someone hasn't showered in a week or their teeth feel disgusting, they'll pay premium prices for relief. Item 5. Salt. Here's item number 5. Something that caused actual riots in Venezuela when it disappeared from stores. And most Americans have containers of it, just sitting in their kitchen cabinet without thinking twice about its value. Salt is unique because it's been used as currency throughout human history. But during economic collapse, salt becomes especially valuable because it solves multiple critical problems that modern people don't usually think about. First, salt is essential for food preservation when refrigeration becomes unreliable or expensive. During the economic crisis, people can't afford to waste food, and salt is the oldest, most reliable preservation method humans have ever developed. But salt isn't just for food preservation, it's a critical nutrient your body needs to survive. Without adequate sodium, you get muscle cramps, fatigue, and eventually organ failure. During Venezuela's collapse, salt disappeared from stores for months because the government controlled pricing, but manufacturers couldn't afford to produce it at mandated prices. When salt occasionally appeared, people would literally fight over packages. Here's what makes salt especially valuable during economic breakdown. Pure salt literally never expires. It's been sitting in the earth for millions of years and will outlast civilization itself. While other goods spoil or become worthless, salt maintains its value indefinitely. I was reading about the Weimar Republic's hyperinflation, and salt became so valuable that people were using it as currency because it held value better than paper money. Item 6. Candles. Let's talk about something that seems almost old-fashioned until economic collapse makes electricity unreliable or unaffordable. Candles become incredibly valuable because they provide light, heat, and psychological comfort when everything else fails. During economic breakdown, electricity becomes expensive, unreliable, or completely unavailable. Power companies can't afford maintenance, fuel costs skyrocket, and infrastructure begins failing. During Greece's financial crisis, rolling blackouts became common as the government tried to reduce costs. Families with candle supplies could maintain normal activities while everyone else sat in darkness. But candles provide more than just light. They provide psychological comfort during chaotic times. The warm, steady glow of a candle creates a sense of home and normalcy when everything else feels uncertain. I was reading accounts from Argentina's economic collapse, and people described candles as hope in wax form because they represented the ability to maintain civilized life even when infrastructure was failing. Here's where candles become especially valuable as barter items. They're self-contained light sources that work regardless of infrastructure or supply chain disruptions. You don't need batteries, fuel, or electrical systems. During Venezuela's crisis, my contacts told me that candles became premium trade items because they solved immediate problems while providing comfort. A single candle could trade for food because it gave families hours of light and psychological relief. Item 7. Aluminum foil. Here's something that sounds crazy until you understand how incredibly versatile aluminum foil becomes during an economic crisis when proper supplies and equipment aren't available. Heavy-duty aluminum foil can be used for cooking without proper cookware, signaling for help, water collection, food storage, antenna construction, insulation, and dozens of other applications. It's like having a Swiss Army knife made of metal. During economic collapse, people lose access to specialized tools and equipment. Aluminum foil becomes valuable because it can substitute for dozens of items that become unavailable or unaffordable. But here's what makes aluminum foil especially problematic during economic breakdown. It requires sophisticated manufacturing processes, global supply chains for raw materials, and significant energy inputs. When economies collapse, these complex production systems shut down quickly. I was studying the collapse of the Soviet Union, and aluminum products became black market currency because the manufacturing infrastructure was centralized and vulnerable to economic disruption. The barter value comes from its immediate usefulness and incredible versatility. Someone might not need foil for cooking right now, but they understand it could solve multiple problems they haven't thought of yet. Item 8. Safety pins. Here's item number 8. Something so simple that most people completely overlook it. But during the Greek financial crisis, people were trading entire paychecks for packages of safety pins because they solved problems that money couldn't fix. Safety pins might seem insignificant, but they become incredibly valuable when everything else is falling apart and people need quick, reliable fasteners for hundreds of applications. Safety pins can secure clothing when new clothes become unaffordable, create temporary repairs on essential equipment, hold bandages in place when medical supplies are limited, and provide emergency fastening for countless survival applications. Here's what makes safety pins especially valuable during economic collapse. They're immediately useful, universally understood, incredibly durable, and solve problems that affect basic human dignity and functionality. During Greece's financial crisis, clothing repairs became essential as people couldn't afford replacements. Safety pins were the only way to keep clothes functional and maintain a decent appearance for work and social situations. But safety pins represent something deeper during an economic crisis. They represent the ability to maintain dignity and functionality when everything else is broken. Being able to secure your clothing and equipment properly helps preserve mental health and self-respect. I was reading accounts from people who lived through the collapse of Yugoslavia, and safety pins became so valuable that people would carefully save and reuse them like precious metals. During Venezuela's hyperinflation, safety pins became more stable stores of value than currency because they maintained consistent utility while money became worthless. The psychology of collapse economics. Here's what's really important to understand about why these specific items become so valuable during economic breakdown. When normal supply chains collapse, people's priorities shift completely from wants to immediate survival needs. These 8 items solve fundamental human problems: fire, power, hygiene, dignity, preservation, light, repair, and fastening. They represent basic functionality that people need to maintain civilized life when everything else is falling apart. But there's also a psychological component that most people miss. Having these items provides a sense of control and preparedness when everything else feels chaotic and uncertain. The bottom line: these 8 household items represent a fundamental shift in understanding what becomes valuable when economic systems break down. While everyone focuses on gold and silver, the real action is in ordinary products that solve immediate human needs. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars building wealth through these items. You can create serious economic security with products that cost pocket change today, but become incredibly valuable when supply chains fail. The families who understand this now will be the ones with options later. When stores are empty and money is worthless, these simple household items could literally keep your family fed, clean, and functional. Start small and build gradually. Pick 1 or 2 items from this list and begin accumulating reasonable quantities. Focus on quality products that will maintain their functionality over time. If this list changed how you think about what's actually valuable during an economic crisis, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. I'm constantly researching economic collapse patterns, studying historical examples, and learning from people who survived real financial breakdowns. Drop a comment telling me which of these 8 items surprised you most, or share your thoughts about what becomes valuable when normal economic systems fail. Your insights help other people understand how to prepare for economic uncertainty. Remember, the goal isn't becoming a hoarder or taking advantage of desperate people. The goal is understanding what actually matters when money stops working, so you can take care of your family and help your community navigate difficult times. Your future self will thank you for understanding the difference between what seems valuable in good times and what actually becomes valuable when everything falls apart.